Welcome to the Year in Rock 1987. It was a boom year for entertainment, with music and movies both setting sales records.
It was a year of comebacks for artists from the 60s and the return of 70s-style disco. It was a year of glasnost, safe sex, the stock market crash, and the Beastie Boys.
But let's begin with two of music's most enduring superstars. This year's Michael Jackson and Bruce Springsteen albums differed in their sound, their outlook, and the degree of hype and anticipation that surrounded them. Though they took different approaches, Bruce and Michael both had big years.
August 31st, 1987 was the day that ended the long wait for Michael Jackson's follow-up to Thriller. Bad was released with as much hype as any album in history. The night of its release, the video debuted on a network TV special, and Michael was back on top again as the album entered Billboard's chart at #1. The first part of the year wasn't so easy. With the album continually postponed and his lifestyle growing ever more eccentric, Michael took his lumps in the press. First, he appeared on the cover of Spin with a cleft chin, raising the plastic surgery issue. Then he attempted to buy the remains of John Merrick, the Elephant Man. And the few times he was seen in public, Michael was accompanied by his best friend, a chimp named Bubbles. But once Bad was out, Michael was off to Japan to start his first solo tour, and Michael Mania reached new levels. While in Japan, Michael gave $20,000 to a family whose child had been kidnapped and murdered. Shortly after, he wrote a letter to People magazine expressing his feelings towards children. Michael wrote, quote, "I worry about the children, all my children all over the world. I live for them. But have mercy, for I've been bleeding a long time now," unquote. Following this, Michael once again became an immediate presence on TV with a new series of $1 Million Pepsi commercials. And he released The Way You Make Me Feel, the second video from Bad, where Michael finds the girl of his dreams. But while Jackson took the media high road, Bruce Springsteen chose the low road. He kept under wraps the first half of the year, but by the summer, the boss was turning up at small clubs like the Stone Pony in Asbury Park, New Jersey, to jam with old buddies like Steve Van Zandt and fellow Jerseyite John Bon Jovi. As Dancing Up a Storm, Springsteen put out the most sedate video of the year for Brilliant Disguise. Bruce limited his public appearances in 1987, but he did participate in the very special Christmas album. And he also performed at a benefit for the late Harry Chapin. By year's end, both artists had reaffirmed their superstar status and left the door open for touring in 1988. Jackson plans to be here in February, while the boss may start even sooner with a tour of theaters and small halls.
So we'll probably see Bruce and Michael on the road in '88.
But who do we see out there in '87? Such big names as Whitney Houston, Run DMC, and John Cougar Mellencamp were among those playing live this past year. But for better or worse in '87, the biggest acts of the year took their shows outdoors.
1987 was the year of the stadium concert. In the past, it was the rare artists who could fill 60,000 seats a night. But in 1987, no fewer than 7 groups took this superstar route.
I see you on the street and you walk on by.
The energy and the communication that I have with my audience is the highlight of my show. There's no special time in the show that I feel better. I like it all the way through.
And her fans didn't just like it, they loved it. From wannabes in Japan, to admirers in the U.S., to hundreds of thousands in Europe, Madonna thrilled and delighted and held court in stadiums everywhere. In her first trip outside the U.S., Madonna played in 8 countries before more than 2 million people. Not bad for only her second tour ever. While Tina Turner may have more tours under her belt than Madonna, her stadium tour of Europe was no less impressive. Playing before audiences of 80,000, Tina's years of hard work paid big dividends.
I'm a performer first, recording artist second, so to speak. And so I put a lot of value on performance. So I think it gets the audience involved.
I wanted to keep it rock and roll, but I wanted to stretch it a bit more than what I've seen in stadiums.
When David Bowie sets his mind to do something, the results are pretty wild. And this past summer's Glass Spider tour may have been the wildest.
It has elements of mixed media, I guess. There's elements of film footage, choreography, minimalism, symbolism. Oh, and there's some rock and roll.
With Peter Frampton joining him on guitar, Bowie proved that stadiums could be used as creatively as a theater. Genesis spent months touring arenas. Then when the warm weather hit, their fans followed them outdoors.
Tonight, 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 oh! make it right tonight, tonight. Oh.
They came by the thousands to fill the biggest stadiums in the U.S. and Europe, where the band played a combination of past material and their current top 10 hits.
The hit singles have meant that younger kids come and see us, and so there are kids out there tonight that weren't even born when we started, you know, which is a strange thing to think about, really.
The Grateful Dead have packed stadiums for years, but this time they did it with a top 10 album and a special guest named Bob Dylan. This 6-stadium hop brimmed with tie-dye, freeform dancing, and late 60s nostalgia, looking a bit like a latter-day Woodstock. And perhaps the stadium show is this generation's way of capturing that kind of communal event atmosphere.
From January to December, AIDS is the one story that stayed in the headlines. It affected every segment of our population and became a nationwide epidemic.
The best protection against the infection right now, barring abstinence, is the use of a condom. A condom should be used during sexual relations from start to finish with anyone who you are not absolutely sure is free of the AIDS virus.
With this report, condoms became big news. A product that had practically no visibility for decades became the buzzword of the year. TV stations had to decide if they would allow them to be advertised on their airwaves.
The condoms I buy are called lifestyles. I'll do a lot for love, but I'm not ready to die for it.
For the first time, condom ads appeared in national magazines, and TV sitcoms dealt with the topic. There were condom dispensers in college dorms. They were given out by schools, churches, and newspapers. There were keychains with condoms cleverly stored inside, and even designer boxer shorts with a pocket for a condom. But as the condom reached new heights, a disturbing report surfaced in August by the FDA that after months of testing, certain brands of condoms failed to reach minimum standards and were forced into recall. An all-star concert was held in April at Wembley Arena in England for AIDS research, treatment, and counseling. On stage at the successful event were Elton John, Boy George, Meatloaf, Kim Wilde, and George Michael. When released, George Michael's I Want Your Sex became the most controversial song of the year. With AIDS being spread through casual sex, many thought it was the wrong time for the song, but Michael insisted the message was explore monogamy.
If I was a child or a teenager now who was just about to go into the world of sex, I'd be very scared of it. And I think people should understand that it's not sex which is the public enemy, but promiscuity is a killer.
While many felt the U.S. government wasn't doing enough to combat AIDS, individuals and groups took matters into their own hands. Art Against AIDS was an effort by 600 New York artists, which raised $2 million. And then there was the $400,000 raised in one night by Madonna. Her sold-out benefit concert at New York's Madison Square Garden in July was the first by a major American pop star.
You know, AIDS is a powerful and mysterious disease that continues to elude us, but we are more powerful because we can stop it from spreading any further by educating ourselves and finding out the facts.
She was not alone in using her star power to attract attention for the AIDS cause. Whoopi Goldberg was one of 100,000 marchers on Washington in October, urging the government to increase funding for AIDS and to wipe out the perception that AIDS is still a gay disease.
It's not an issue about who gets it. Everybody can get it, because 6-year-old kids are not gay.
Longtime AIDS activist Liz Taylor also went to Washington, where she testified before Congress. And late this year, New York was one of several cities to launch their own televised public service announcements against AIDS. And the ads took on a harsher quality than the condom ads of earlier in the year.
Don't ask for AIDS. Don't get it.
But the hard facts remain. There were over 17,900 new cases of AIDS reported this year, and over 26,800 people have died from the disease so far. And at year's end, there is still no cure.
The Year in Rock will return with Poison, the Beastie Boys, Pink Floyd, and George Harrison as we take a look at some of the new bands and big comebacks of '87. Back to the Year in Rock.
The past couple of years on radio have seen the rise of both top 40 and classic rock, but the top new stations in 1987 fueled a resurgence in disco music. To get played on stations like Hot 103 in New York and Power 106 in LA, your song had to have some kind of dance beat. Described as a combination of top 40 and club music, these stations helped to make Exposé, Debbie Gibson, and Jody Watley household names. Hot 103, actually created in late '86, quickly shot to the top 5 in New York area music stations, and it has spawned variations and imitations in Miami, Philadelphia, and other cities where there's a heavy club scene. '87 also saw the first new age radio station, LA's The Wave, and another radio trend could be on the way.
So you want to know where the next Madonna is coming from or who the new U2 is going to be? Well, every year some new artists manage to break through. And this year's new ones showed a wide range in musical styles and visual images. They went from pop to rap to hard rock, but just as we mentioned, perhaps the biggest area of growth this year was in dance music. And perhaps following Madonna's lead, more women appeared in this category than any other.
Dance music has been known as a passing fad, but people have always danced, you know. People have always looked for music with a good beat.
17-year-old Debbie Gibson found the right beat twice with Only in My Dreams and Shake Your Love. Both went top 5. But it was the all-female Exposé that led the pack as the only new band this year to put 3 singles in the top 10. This past summer, they went on the road with another dance band, Lisa Lisa and the Cult Jam, who had 2 #1 singles of their own, Head to Toe and Lost in Emotion.
Hit the beat now, lost in my feeling, lost the ceiling.
Jody Watley scored 3 hit singles from her debut album, while 15-year-old Tiffany toured the shopping malls playing her #1 hit.
I think we're alone now.
But probably the most unexpected female soloist to emerge this year was Suzanne Vega, a folkie whose hit song had an unusual topic.
My name is Luca. It's a song that's written through the eyes of a 9-year-old boy who, if you kind of read between the lines, is being abused.
Abusive is what the British Parliament called these guys.
Hello, we're the Beastie Boys.
We are the Beastie Boys, all right.
Their debut album, Licensed to Ill, was #1 for 7 weeks last spring and sold over 4 million copies. Both firsts for a rap album. The Beastie Boys' Safe Sex Tour left behind a legacy of trashed hotel rooms, arrests, and angry concert promoters over the use of a pink inflatable 20-foot phallus on stage. However, when paired with Run DMC during the summer, their Together Forever tour was trouble-free.
No sleep till!
While the Beastie Boys parodied heavy metal, new rock bands like Poison used that sound to find their own success.
I went into a bathroom in the airport and somebody had wrote Led Zepp rules. Somebody crossed it out and wrote Poison. And I'm like, whoa, this is heavy.
Poison's first album, Look What the Cat Dragged In, went triple platinum last summer. Recorded in just 12 days, the album cost only $13,000 to produce, and the band spent 10 months of '87 on the road playing hits like Talk Dirty to Me, I Want Action, and I Won't Forget You. And then there's Europe. Some call them the Swedish Bon Jovi because of their melodic hard rock and good-looking lead singer. Joey Tempest showed he could turn on a crowd just like John Bon himself. Australia's Crowded House was another foreign band that made it big. While their ballad Don't Dream It's Over charted high both here and back home, Crowded House was honored as the best new band at the Video Music Awards. And as the year ended, one of England's hottest new stars got set to make his first American tour. Terence Trent D'Arby is an American whose talent and ego are creating a stir.
People who last longest in this business are those who are able to take an image and make it larger than their music.
Looking at the lifestyle of 1987, you might call it the year of the yuppie, at least until the stock market crash of October 19th. Television seemed to be slavishly devoted to the baby boom generation with hit shows like L.A. Law. But the popularity of Star Trek: The Next Generation shows that baby boomers are also intent on recreating their childhood. TV advertising continued to make big news as a bull terrier named Spuds McKenzie created all sorts of controversy. One Dallas school district thought the Spuds image promoted excessive drinking and sent kids who wore Spuds t-shirts home from school. And the New Age phenomenon grew to epidemic proportions in '87 as crystals became the trendy item to be found around the necks of millions of neo-hippies.
You might want to call 1987 the year of the dinosaur. The charts in '87 looked a lot like the charts of '71, as George Harrison, Fleetwood Mac, and Pink Floyd had successful years. It could be the rise of classic rock radio or the graying of the baby boom generation, but artists from the past had a new relevance in '87, so here are some of the top comebacks of the year.
If you don't ever breathe and just stop and recharge your battery, I don't know how you can keep doing it, you know, and get it to a level that excites you.
Robbie Robertson first came into prominence in the 60s with the band, giving Bob Dylan his first electric backup. And with songs like The Wait and The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, they became American cult figures. But the band disbanded, and it took Robbie almost 10 years before he recorded his first solo album.
Because I didn't feel like I had anything to say. I didn't want to step up to the plate until I felt like, you know, you can't hold me back. I wanted to have that fever, you know, in doing it, and I waited for it to come.
If this were hypothetically to be the last thing that I was involved with Fleetwood Mac, I would certainly be happy to go out with this album.
Well, Lindsey Buckingham was able to help write and produce Fleetwood Mac's biggest-selling album since Rumors. And even after the release of 3 hit singles, It's Exit Buckingham, Enter Rick Vito and Billy Burnett, and Fleetwood Mac hit the road for the first time in almost 5 years.
We weren't sure when we started the tour, you know, how people would accept the new guys.
Much to our delight, the audience don't seem to mind so much that Lindsey's not there, you know.
I think this band sounds very much like Fleetwood Mac, which is much more important than Stevie Nicks or Lindsey Buckingham.
Buckingham's departure may have momentarily tainted the Mac's return, but that paled next to Roger Waters' legal action to block his former band members from using the name Pink Floyd.
I don't think that he or anyone else has the right to tell us whether or not we can carry on and use it ourselves. I have spent 18.5 years earning it, after all.
Both Waters and Pink Floyd took some of the same classic tunes on the road this year. But Roger wanted to make sure his songs weren't perceived as Pink Floyd songs.
Not doing any Pink Floyd songs.
Your songs?
I'm doing a lot of my own songs. I don't think I'm doing anything written by the Pink Floyd.
While Waters' Radio Chaos album languished, Pink Floyd's Momentary Lapse of Reason went top 10, and they headlined one of '87's most successful tours. It could be There Is Something in a Name. Remember these guys? After a 5-year hiatus, musician turned movie producer George Harrison turned musician again with one of the year's most heavily anticipated albums, Cloud 9.
I don't feel that I'm making a comeback. This is, I'm making a comeback into the eye of the public, maybe by doing these videos or interviews. It just was feeling, you know, that I was in a good mood to do an album, and it just worked out, the timing just worked out that it was this year. I've never been anywhere, and I'm not going anywhere, I've just been here all the time.
And so have the Grateful Dead, but it took them over 20 years before they made their first official video, Touch of Grey, and it took them over 7 years before releasing In the Dark, their biggest studio album ever.
I'm really happy with it, and this is the first record in I don't know how long that the whole band, everybody in the band is happy with. That's unusual. So this is our conception of what it's like to be the Grateful Dead in now, you know, in 1987. I like that We Will Survive stuff. You know? Yeah, that's a good sentiment, you know.
When we come back, we'll have the year in movies, heavy metal, and the year's biggest controversies. Well, if you like lawsuits, sex scandals, or just plain dirt, 1987 had everything you could ask for. Here's our man Kevin Seal with more about that particular topic.
From coast to coast, everyone was talking about Jim and Tammy, Fawn Hall and Donna Rice, and Billy Idol's 2 girlfriends. It was a year for dirty laundry, leaky cover-ups, and big checks for lawyers. Big sales for tabloid papers, too. In short, 1987 was a great year for controversy. Controversy raged everywhere in 1987, in the courts, in the newspapers, here and all around the world. People sued and people got sued. And who made the big bucks? The lawyers. So let's start with some legal action. David Bowie got sued for rape. Elton John denied a sex and drug scandal and sued the British newspaper that reported it. ZZ Top sued a New Zealand newspaper for implying they might be members of the Ku Klux Klan. 2 former Bruce Springsteen roadies sued the boss for back pay. Concertgoers sued Motley Crue and David Lee Roth for playing too loud. David Letterman got slapped with an $85 million suit when he referred to actress denture wearer Martha Raye as Martha Raye, actress condom user. And the Beatles sued Capitol Records for licensing their recording of Revolution to Nike.
You can see the problem. If we don't do something about it, it's going to go on forever. Every tune we ever had is going to become some sort of advert.
Sean Penn had his day in court, followed by his days behind bars for a parole violation, all courtesy of the Los Angeles Police Department.
It's the finest department I've ever been arrested by.
Penn was spared yet another date in court as Madonna changed her mind and canceled a divorce suit against him. Well, Sean may have patched things up with his one and only, but Billy Idol had one too many women on his hands. Billy was seen with one of them during a drug bust, forcing both women to hold a press conference to clean up the mess.
I'd like to get the record straight that I'm Billy Idol's girlfriend.
I never was in love with Billy.
Mick Jagger's girlfriend, model Jerry Hall, spent a night in the Barbados slammer. She was arrested and then cleared on a charge of marijuana possession.
Mick described it as Alice in Wonderland, but I tell you, it was a lot worse than Wonderland.
And speaking of Alice in Wonderland, how about our nation's capital in 1987?
Let's let the people decide. I'm back in the race.
Find the right individuals to do the job, and then let them go to it.
I have absolutely no recall.
He just didn't know.
There are reasons why it happened, but no excuses.
I make no excuses.
But the biggest controversy of all this year hit below the Bible Belt.
I need some very quick money. I mean, I need it now.
No, now is not the time. I wake up every morning wishing that they had killed me. And Jim does too.
And there'll be Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell going, you know the Lord Jesus loves you if you send your money. He's here. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I don't know about you, but I just don't see how 88's going to top this year for dirt.
From the year's controversy returned to a form of rock and roll always filled with controversy, heavy metal. John Bon Jovi and Company brought melodic metal back last year, and the trend continued this year. Metal 87 was all about making it in the mainstream.
In '87, heavy metal ruled a new territory, the top of the pop charts. At one point this year, 4 bands were in Billboard's top 10.
All the bands, Bon Jovi and Whitesnake and Motley Crue and Poison and Cinderella, all these bands are bringing the fun back to rock and roll again, and I think that's what's great.
You know I never seen you look so good. You never act the way you should.
Well, first and foremost, we just want everybody to have a good time.
Ironically, Aerosmith was the last of these bands to make it to the top 10, even though they were an inspiration for the others.
It was my idea to dress in drag because I am androgynous. I can get away with that sort of thing, and I had a good time doing it. Doesn't particularly mean anything, just means that I had a good time doing it.
We couldn't keep you from doing it.
Finally, after all these years, Americans have shown great taste. I think absence makes the heart grow fonder.
The revamped Whitesnake brought back the 70s style of hard rock, and lead singer David Coverdale found his true love in Tawny Katane, who became his fiancée after appearing in 3 of the band's videos.
Is this love that I'm feeling?
Overcoming incredible odds, Def Leppard released Hysteria. Fans did not forget them during their 4-year absence, and the album reached the top 5. With more airplay, shorter songs, and an image that appealed not only to metalheads but also to girls, heavy metal became a lot more accessible to a lot more people.
Motley's got a pretty strange crowd, and then you've got your rockers and your headbangers and a lot of girls. There's a whole mixture of people.
Parents showed up at the concerts too. Quiet rooms sprang up across the country as a place for them to hang out while their kids were at the concert. Some even liked the music.
I like Motley Crue. I like Girls, Girls, Girls. That's catchy.
That's cool.
Bon Jovi was the coolest though. Slippery When Wet sold 12.5 million worldwide, and John Bon Jovi set sex appeal records back home.
I don't consider myself a sex symbol. I'm a singer in a rock band, you know, and that's all I ever wanted to be, and that's all I'm going to be.
1987 was the year that saw heavy metal bands get where they wanted to be, the top.
High tech was everywhere in 1987, and even when it wasn't really there, it made news. Take DAT, digital audio tape, which brings compact disc sound to cassettes. We have yet to hear it, but we heard all about it, because record labels feel blank DAT is the ultimate home taping threat. The major labels propose an anti-copying chip in DAT decks, which manufacturers say will ruin the digital sound. Meanwhile, DAT maker Sony bought CBS Records, America's biggest label. As for that other digital music medium, the compact disc, well, that kept growing in 1987. In the first half of 87, CDs accounted for 15% of all pre-recorded music sales, only 4% less than vinyl LPs. In 1987, we began to hear about the visual equivalent of digital sound, high-definition TV, which already brings movie-quality pictures to home screens in Japan, but hasn't come to the U.S. yet.
Home video grew by leaps and bounds, and with VCRs now in over 50% of this country's homes, you'd think the movie business would suffer, but that's not what happened in 1987. The showbiz weekly Variety has predicted that when all the cash is counted, the studios will gross over $4.2 billion. That's a new record. It's not just because of rising ticket prices. In 1987, it seems more people were going to more movies than ever before.
An older audience went to the movies in '87. Teenage attendance was down, romance was back. Steamy scenes and weird relationships were in abundance.
Hocus pocus.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go.
Hollywood was bored with the Brat Pack and turned to an older generation for its leading men.
Well, let me point out a few things to you, all right? First of all, nobody uses the word mafia anymore. Down here, we call them wise guys.
The women were different, too. Not necessarily tall and blonde, but one statuesque Brigitte Nielsen did appear in the year's biggest box office hit, Beverly Hills Cop 2, which grossed over $150 million. The soundtrack from the movie went platinum as well, joining two other soundtracks, La Bamba and Dirty Dancing, both of which went #1 on the Billboard chart. Prince did some Dirty Dancing of his own in Sign of the Times, which was a concert movie, unlike last year's flop Under the Cherry Moon. Perhaps Madonna should have followed Prince's example. While her soundtrack was climbing up the charts, her film, Who's That Girl, was falling flat at the box office. But it was the $50 million Ishtar that was the box office disaster this year. Comedy could not help out two of Hollywood's biggest stars, Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty.
If you're not my daughter, will you still be mine?
Comedy did add a new element to action films, such as RoboCop, Predator, and Lethal Weapon.
Yeah. Are you calling me crazy? You think I'm crazy? Yeah, you want to see crazy? I'll tell you. Now, that's a real badge. I'm a real cop, and this is a real gun.
The box office draw of these action films was strong, as was the attraction to so-called independence. The Oscar-winning Platoon led to other independent films made with lower budgets and offbeat themes.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Platoon also heralded the acceptance of Vietnam as movie material, as other filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick joined Oliver Stone in dealing with that subject. So now you feel bad at having missed all these great films? Just head for your local video store. More than ever before, what was at the movie theater this year may already be out on video.
We'll be back with some of the fashion headlines of 1987, but first, some of our favorite one-liners of the year.
It's crazy!
You guys are nosy bastards, aren't you?
I was a virgin till I was 20.
Why do I get so much attention for turning letters? I don't know.
If you were sick of U2, by the end of this week, you're going to be even sicker of U2 next year.
Is anything we do ever going to penetrate into the regular world, you know?
I'm sick of all these cats getting on video, man.
No, we're not going to take two. We're going to say it again. If you said it, NFL.
Well, see if you can edit any of that down and use it.
I mean, all the heavy metal bands in America wear makeup and nobody calls them faggots.
Excuse me, I'm such a mess tonight.
Who wrote those questions? Are stupid. Yeah. Yeah, so can I spit on them?
I've never seen a woman drink so much in my life. As Elton's mum.
It's really unbelievable.
Hello,
I'm Michael Jackson.
Hello, this is Bruce Springsteen.
I am the piano man.
F*** Tom Petty. This is my bedroom. Sex. Wow. I was just with Madonna. And
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I can't.
I hope that people are wearing condoms these days.
We just happen to be chicks, man. What can we do?
I heard something on the MTV News. Is there some sort of lawsuit? I never really, I didn't even know I had these stupid sunglasses on. I hate guys doing interviews with sunglasses.
Now here's the irony of the situation.
We were doing a comedy movie. She hasn't got a sense of humor.
I love you too. Shut up for a second.
And her husband Sean, who's a really nice, intelligent fella, and I had a laugh with him at times, but, you know, he sort of gets all uptight.
I'm Mick's friend forever, you know.
Sure, I like Keith.
Oh, isn't that special?
But, I think we covered it.
While the bestseller lists may have Tom Wolfe and Bob Woodward on top, there were lots of other books that kept us turning the pages in 1987. As far as rock and roll books were concerned, Chuck Berry and Ron Wood wrote their autobiographies. The so-called graphic novel came of age this year. Full-length comic books like Mouse and the Watchmen made the crossover from comic stores to bookstores. And if you were into magazines, chances are you were reading hip local rags like Spy, Details, Paper, LA Style, and San Francisco's Equator magazine. And fans of hard-boiled 50s crime fiction got a charge out of Black Lizard books. The series featured the late Jim Thompson's twisted tales of low-life psychotics and murderers, perhaps the trendiest books of the year.
Like most of you, we at MTV News spent 1987 totally addicted to style. For a look at the year in fashion, let's turn it over to Julie Brown.
Okay, Fashion 87, it's hard to sum it all up in one pretty picture. Is it a pair of acid-wash blue jeans, or is it a girl wearing a pair of steel-tipped shoes? How about wild surf colors on everything from high-top sneakers to pajamas? As you'll see right now, it was all those things and a lot more as we take a trip down the runway of Addicted to Style 87. Fashion 1987 was kind of like what you wear to a wedding. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Well, kind of blue. Jean manufacturers reaped millions of dollars this year with treated denim. Whether they called it acid-washed or marble-washed, Americans bought it. After 10 years in the sportswear business, Esprit launched a jeans line, but omitted treated denim on purpose.
I don't like the acid washes. I think it's really pushing it too far. I think that the stone washes and the over washes are really nice, but when you start putting chemicals in with it, that it's getting contrived and very gimmicky.
But on the whole, fashion was anything but contrived. Skirts came in 3 shapes. The miniskirt made a serious comeback when every designer from Calvin Klein to David Cameron showed them off in their collections. Another skirt that got a lot of attention in the press, but not as much interest on the street, was the petticoat. The most outrageous form of skirt, though, came from the grande dame of fashion in London, Vivienne Westwood, when she designed the crinoline.
When I introduced the crinny, I realised that people needed a fashion dynamic to start looking at the feminine form in a new way.
Japanese designers like Rei Kawakubo of Comme des Garçons and Yohji Yamamoto continued to create lines that were way ahead of their times, while English dressmaker Catherine Hamnett thought clothes should be flirty, fun, and above all, sexy.
Life is role-playing, you know, clothes are role-playing, and you have to decide what role you'd like to play.
Back in America, New York designer Denise Carbonell showed off sweaters that looked like they were inside out and her signature black and white clothing. Steven Sprouse was back on the scene. He's now designing clothes reminiscent of Jackie O with a touch of the Sex Pistols. Thanks to Patrick Cox, shoes were wacky this year. He made them with crooked heels, black fringes and padlocks. We saw accessories with a sense of humour, condom hats from Workers for Freedom, over-the-knee socks that fell down a lot, and Paul Smith's boxer shorts in stripes and polka dots. But the fashion world lost one of its most talented designers when Willie Smith died in the spring. A man with the most in style shared his ideas on how to figure out your own style.
Style is something that comes from within you, how you want to look, how you want to feel, and how you want to project yourself.
All in all, fashion designers around the world created silhouettes that define the way we live. It was a year where women weren't afraid to bare their bodies and men weren't too bashful to say they liked a great-fitting pair of trousers. Because of the AIDS crisis, fashion designers realized we may be doing more flirting than anything else. And what better way to attract someone than when you're wearing something flattering? Yeah, that was 87. Next year, look for hemlines to go down in the fall and acid wash denim to go out. But whatever, I'll still be wearing whatever I want. Here's Adam.
Thank you very much, Julie. 20 years ago in 1967, the lifestyle of an entire generation went through a drastic change. Young people dropped out of straight society, tripped on LSD, and protested the war in Vietnam. And that period was echoed time and time again in the sounds, styles, and issues of 1987. Over 20 years ago, the Beatles almost single-handedly changed the look, the sound, and the lifestyle of an entire generation. And in 1987, with the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and other Beatles albums on CD, it began to look and sound like the 60s all over again.
The Council for a Summer of Love proclaims a summer of love in the city of San Francisco.
Have you ever been to Lovin'?
No. A good feeling can happen anytime, any place, anywhere. It's just that everybody felt good 20 years ago in Haight-Ashbury all in one little place. And inside, the kids are all alike. It's just that it's 20 years later.
I've been on the road for about 4 weeks now, and I haven't had to worry about money or food or anything like that. It's been great. Beautiful people here. This is not the 60s either, it's the 80s.
That's what the disillusionment with the hippie thing is. You know, it's a fight to stay idealistic, you know. And the other side of it, of course, is just blatant. I mean, it's drugs. Of course, the drugs now are so much worse. I mean, what about crack? I mean, you know, we didn't have crack in Haight-Ashbury. You had potheads, acid freaks.
You're a what? I'm a psychedelic poster expert. You mean you paint them? Oh, no, I read them.
These so-called psychedelic posters in the 60s, in a way we weren't thinking of that much as psychedelic. We thought of them as Victorian and Art Nouveau.
Well, whatever you call them, the original posters from the 60s have become collector's items, and the artwork and the original artists are more popular than ever.
I wanted to get arrested. I felt it was very important to get arrested because I wanted to protest the war in Vietnam, which I think is an obscene war. I'll repeat myself, I think it's more obscene than all the dirty four-letter words that all the dirty American authors put into all the dirty books that you ban in your library.
I want them to remember. I want them to remember, to know what war really is. I want them to know what it was really like, and I want them to remember that war, because that was a massive tragedy.
But in the meantime, America is completely transformed. It's a completely different place now than it was, or than it was before. It's never gone back. It never will. It never can. It's over, you know. Old America is gone. This is the beginning of new America.
One band that revived the spirit of the late 60s was R.E.M. Staying outside the music business establishment, they steadily built up a cult following for the past 5 years, and that cult exploded into mass popularity in '87, taking this often mysterious band from Georgia right into the musical mainstream.
Not that much has changed, except for, you know, if they were playing to 8,000 people instead of 18.
Everything that's big is bad. Yeah, I don't like big things.
But like it or not, R.E.M. was big in 1987. Springtime found their home video, R.E.M. Succumbs, topping Billboard's music video chart. And 7 years of hard work paid off when their 5th studio album, Document, went top 10, even spawning a hit single. But Michael Stipe doesn't think R.E.M. changed that much. He says radio and the music biz finally caught up with them.
It's not like we're doing something that's extraordinarily ahead of its time, but it's taken them the entire 80s to be able to accept music that's not kind of predisposed towards radio and towards commercial success.
When R.E.M. put out their first single 6 years ago, they were instantly adopted by college radio. But unlike other college bands who crossed over and were accused of selling out, R.E.M. managed to keep their old fans.
With them, it's just their music more than anything else. They don't care about selling out, you know, they play what they want to.
They're not afraid to try something new.
It still seems like that they're more of a college band, that they're never going to be, you know, huge, because it doesn't seem like that they're going to let themselves do it.
Peter Buck says their success is due to a lot of hard work.
We've been around long enough so that the people that used to go into radio stations, they say, sorry, we can't play your records, you don't fit in. Now we fit in.
If anything, R.E.M. proved you don't have to be mainstream to make it to the top, and their success in '87 will probably help college bands in the future.
Things that we never thought would happen have happened. And I would say that we're at a real crossroads right now in a lot of different ways.
The End of the World was their last single for '87, but it's hardly the last we'll see of R.E.M.
It's the end of the world as you know it. I feel fine.
REM made a couple of pretty unusual videos, and they were just 2 of the thousands MTV played all year. Here's a look back at some of the more memorable images of 1987.
Well, come on, pretty baby, won't you walk with me? Come on, pretty baby, won't you talk with me?
And we're back with the Year in Rock.
10 years ago, the Ramones released an album called Rocket to Russia. But this was the year rock really went to Russia. Here's a look at the musical glasnost of 1987.
This was the year that rock went to the communist bloc, but things got off to a violent start last June when riots broke out in communist East Berlin. Youths gathered at the Berlin Wall to hear concerts by David Bowie, Genesis, and Eurythmics, who were performing in a stadium on the other side. They scuffled with police, shouting, "Long live freedom and democracy." And freedom and democracy is what motivated Russians and Americans to walk together from Leningrad to Moscow. The July 4th Peace Walk culminated in the Interdependence Day concert.
I just think that there's nothing that speaks to people's hearts and souls more than music. And this is the way, another way to look at getting world cooperation and peace.
I'll bet this is the first time a woman has done this in the Soviet Union.
Bonnie Raitt, Santana, the Doobie Brothers, and James Taylor all performed in this Bill Graham-promoted concert.
We're in Moscow on the 4th of July. It's pretty amazing.
Later in the summer, Billy Joel became the first American musician to appear on Russian TV and actually tour the Soviet Union.
I would tell any artist, any band, any writer who wants to come over here, your music is going to be more meaningful to you than it's ever been in your life.
And coming full circle, as the year ended, one of the Soviet Union's leading underground rock stars, Boris Grebenshchikov, was allowed to come to the States to record with American musicians.
I can tell you one thing. Rock and roll is subversive by definition. And it must be. If it's not subversive, then it's not rock and roll.
Good night. Thank you. Don't take any from anybody.
Every so often a band or an artist comes along and completely dominates a year. In the past it's been Michael Jackson, Bruce Springsteen, or Madonna. But 1987 belonged to U2. From their political views to the Edge's unique guitar sound, U2 ruled the airwaves of '87. There was fun, there was controversy, and there was a lot of great music. So here we go with the U2 scrapbook for '87.
It's an LP where we open ourselves to outside influences like gospel and blues and American folk music.
It's about, I think, people trying to find an identity. It's about a misplaced people. It's about traveling people.
The Joshua Tree was one of the biggest albums of the year, selling well over 4 million copies and riding the #1 spot for 9 weeks. U2 stepped into the middle of controversy as their tour began in Arizona. Governor Evan Meacham had eliminated Martin Luther King's birthday as a state holiday, and many artists protested by refusing to play the state. Since U2 took such inspiration from Dr. King, fans wondered why they played.
I think of all groups, in a way, U2 should be on stage in Arizona to speak out for the memory of Martin Luther King, who was a great American.
The tour took them to all parts of America and gave them all kinds of new experiences.
Well, so far on this tour, we've discovered Mexican food, the tango, and the truth about Las Vegas.
While U2 discovered America, more Americans discovered the best of U2.
The phenomenon of the group is the audience. It's how fanatical and how loyal they are.
They have like a special bond with their fans. They don't, like other bands, like would just come out and like wouldn't even like bother with their fans. They come out and talk to their fans, sign autographs.
I used to kind of think, you know, do they really get what it's all about? But even if they don't get what it's all about, even if they just come to the concerts because, you know, we're a good band to see live, that's okay too.
They're just your regular kind of highly intelligent rock and roll fan.
If you can't get to concerts, videos are the way to see the band, and during 1987, U2 released 3 of them. But Where the Streets Have No Name is the video that will be remembered.
Now, in fact, the cops won the day in Los Angeles, but we made it look like we did. And it was a fair fight, as I say, but we sort of lost in the end.
The fall leg of the tour featured the band playing in outdoor stadiums as well as arenas and being captured on film for a movie to be released in 1988. In Philadelphia, Bono fell and dislocated his shoulder, but the band refused to slow down. In New York, they found time to rehearse and play with a gospel choir that had recorded a version of one of their songs. They also appeared on Robbie Robertson's comeback album and donated a track to the very special Christmas LP. In November, U2 played and filmed a free concert in downtown San Francisco as a gift to their fans.
I just feel that rock and roll should be able to play a free concert in the middle of the city. It's, you know, so many dark and ugly things stop the traffic in our cities, and I wanted something light and beautiful stop the traffic, and that's what our concert was. And I just wrote, "Stop the traffic." You know, rock and roll stops the traffic.
Bono did have to pay for his actions. He was charged with malicious mischief and had to pay to have the statue cleaned.
It's almost, you know, let's boot me, come out type party, actually.
With that, U2 announced that they would end the year with 2 concerts in Arizona to wrap filming of their movie. Tickets were only $5, and over 120,000 fans showed up to denounce Governor Meekham's stand on Martin Luther King and celebrate a great year for rock and roll's reigning champs.
I was there in Tempe, and it was a good show. Really, it was their year.
Yeah, it was, and that was '87. Next year, we can look forward to the second Amnesty International tour, a U2 movie, and lots of new bands, unexpected comebacks, and a presidential race that promises lots of intrigue.
And of course, MTV News will be there to cover it all.